So many of you are familiar with the fact that there's adult education courses taught from Cal Poly Humboldt. It's called the OLLI series, OLLI. You can find it on the web. And anyone can sign up for courses. It's a very nominal fee, $25 to take the course. And typically, it's either a field trip or maybe a classroom trip, but also often Zoom classes taught, talks taught. And I always check that out every half year as to what their courses are they're offering. And I sign up for all of Jerry Rohde's courses because he's our county historian. I think you probably all must know Jerry, and he's a fascinating speaker. He knows everything about the history of this county. You probably can't point to any old building and I'm not able to tell you about the history of that building. And he also has a good sense of humor. So his talks are really entertaining and informative. And I thought it'd be a good idea to have him be a guest here and give a sample of the kind of style that he has. So please let's give a warm welcome to him. He's coming here by Zoom, and he'll be giving you a presentation.
Okay. Can everyone hear me? Vanessa, are you picking up my audio?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Can it be louder? Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to do a short little quiz for you folks today. It's very nice being with you virtually. I'm going to see how much you know about certain parts of Arcata's history. And I'll give you the answers, of course, but you can try figuring them out for yourself. So Vanessa, if you want to switch to the next image. Okay, so this looks maybe partly familiar to you, at least the lower part of this building, the Arcata Creamery. This is a photo taken many years ago when the building was fairly new. And the part that looks different is the big tower in the background. Can you, Vanessa, hit that? Yeah, so why the tall tower? Anyone have an idea about that? If you do, speak kind of loudly so I can hear you.
Cows with long udders.
Well, that's a nice try. I didn't expect any of you to have the right answer, and that certainly wasn't it. But Vanessa, again, please. This is the reason why. And another flick. This is in a tower, and it's actually taller than the one in Arcata, but it had a similar purpose. It's in Dubuque, Iowa. It's one of the few remaining examples of this type of structure, and it's what they call a shot tower. Notice it's 6 stories tall, maybe just a little taller than the original tower at the Arcata Creamery. And I'll explain to you what that shot tower did. So Vanessa, here. And one more time. Yeah. So back in the old days when they wanted to make shot for shotguns the hard way, they would create this tall tower, 6 stories or more. And up at the top, they would bring molten lead and pour it through a grating or a screen. And that divided the liquid into small droplets. And the droplets would fall through the screen and drop those 6 or 8 stories. And as they dropped, they were cooling, of course, and also they were developing the shape of a sphere as they moved through space. And at the bottom, they dropped into a area of water, a pond of water that cooled them off permanently. And that gave you the shot that you needed to put in shotguns or even musket balls earlier than that. And this technique was adopted then by the dairy industry. Vanessa, could you do another one? And here's a more modern version of it. But when they wanted to create condensed milk, they would actually use this same system, using the towers like at the Arcata Creamery. And they would take the liquid milk up to the top and drop it through a grading system. And it fell those 4 or 5 or 6 stories. It actually then dried out and became the condensed milk that we're used to and used to maybe buy in packages in the old days. And the figure here on the left shows a more modern version of that system where they are still drying it in the tower. So that's what they did at the Arcata Creamery. Also, and you better look soon before they tear it down, at the creamery that they had in Lolita. There's a big tower there. There's still a tower, I believe, at the Fortuna Creamery as you come into town. So there were several of these drying towers that were used locally. In fact, the one at Lolita actually dried the milk for K rations that the soldiers used in World War II. And it was such a big operation that they actually had to bring milk in from out of the area. They couldn't supply enough milk even with all the dairy cattle we had here. So that became the big activity for the creamery there at Lolita for a number of years. So anyway, that's why we have the tall tower there. And now, of course, it's gone and we can't dehydrate our milk in Arcata anymore. So let's go on to another question. This is a photo that was colorized of the Arcata Wharf, the one that sometimes at low tide you can see some piling for that go out into the bay. And it's a standard picture showing ocean-going size ships coming partway up into the North Bay, which they call Arcata Bay sometimes, and they would load and unload goods here. And in the lower right of this image, you can see the railroad tracks for the Arcata and Mad River Railroad, and they actually have a number of small cars there that are loaded and are going to be transported into Arcata. So that's a standard photo of the Arcata Wharf. Now let's go to another image. Here's a photo that always gets labeled the Arcata Wharf. And in fact, it's up in the north part of the bay, but is it the Arcata Wharf? Let's find out. Vanessa? No, it's not. And I'll show you why, Vanessa. There, that's Fickle Hill in the background of this photo. So we're actually looking east from the photographer's perspective. And if we were looking east from the Arcata Wharf, we'd be looking up towards the plaza. We'd be looking out maybe up toward the hillside where HSU is, or Cal Poly Humboldt is now. But instead, we're looking over towards Sunnybray and beyond it, Fickle Hill. So this wharf was a second wharf that came out into the bay. It was built a little later and was called the Shingle Wharf. And this photo, conveniently enough, shows all of these shingles that are stacked there on the wharf. And there were 2 shingle mills, one in Sunnybray and one over in Jacoby Creek, that manufactured millions of shingles. And one night, when there were about 4 million shingles stored on the wharf, they caught fire. And let's do another image here. Yep, there it went. Then there was a hell of a fire. It burned about 2 million of the shingles, and it finally burned a hole in the wharf itself, and a bunch of the flaming shingles fell down into the bay and floated around, and some of them were still on fire, and they threatened to actually burn the wharf from the bottom side up. Well, finally, word went to Eureka. They could see a glow in the sky, and people wondered what was happening. And they wound up sending a ferry up here that had a fire engine on it and the Eureka Fire Department. They didn't have good equipment up in Arcata in those days. And when the fire engine got up here and could pump water on the fire, they finally put it out. There was a hole in the wharf, and they lost about 1 million of the shingles, but the rest of them they were able to salvage. So let's, you can actually see vestiges of this second image. Yeah, that's fine. You can keep going, Vanessa. And now we'll go after Oh boy, it's been the second time. Okay, here's the nautical chart of what we call Arcata Bay, the north part of Humboldt Bay. And let's hit the button again. And this is the main channel that came up into the bay, and another main channel. And now we'll look at the two wharfs. There's the Arcata Wharf. We'll do it again, coming down from the shoreline. And then the pink line is the shingle wharf. And we'll get okay. So there they all are. And those two wharfs went out to the deep water channel so that these ocean-going ships could come up here and load and unload their goods. And you can see with that second wharf coming over from the east, being built second, it had to bend around there at its western end so it didn't bump into the Arcata Wharf. So we have actually the two wharfs that you now know about. And let's keep going. If you want to know more about that, you can go to the Press at Cal Poly Humboldt website, and you can download a free copy of my book on the Humboldt Bay shoreline between Eureka and Arcata, and it'll tell you more about this and a whole lot of other things. And that's just free of charge, so if you're willing to click a few times on your cursor, you can get there. Here we are at the southeastern edge of the Arcata Marsh, one of the ponds there. And if you notice in the foreground or in the midground, there are some of these circular wooden posts with some rebar sticking out of them. And we can look at a close-up of that. Here's one that really shows up. And that is part of the piling that ran along the bay, and on top of it rested the shingle wharf. Let's do one more click and another one. And where I've put the pink line there down at the bottom, you can see that the southernmost oxidation pond, way down at the southeastern part of the Arcata Marsh, you can walk along the road up above that. And as you walk there, you're walking right next to where the shingle wharf was, and you can see the residual piling, a whole row of them there, sort of pointing back towards the Sunnybrae area. Okay, so that's another question. Now we're still up around the bay. Anyone have an idea what this is?
A dredge.
Yeah.
Dredge.
Yeah, dredge, it's a specialized type of dredge called a diking machine, and it was used to build the dikes that still run around the north and east sides of Arcata Bay. This photo is from about 1893, when they were building the first dike system and diking off the wetlands that used to run up pretty close to the south side of Arcata. When they'd finished with this diking, they waited a couple of years until rainfall had washed the salt water out from these former wetlands, and then they converted it to grazing land. And for years afterwards, even now, some of that area is used by dairy cattle for grazing. It runs all the way from Mad River Slough on the west, and you can actually go all the way down to Eureka Slough on the southeast and see evidences of the dike system, which is, of course, right now imperiled by sea level rise. And if you got a break in this dike, you're suddenly going to have a restoration of some of these wetlands. Let's keep going, Vanessa. And 1893. Okay, here's a image of a nautical chart showing the wetland areas. Those are the dark areas with all the little vein-like sloughs and waterways. You can see Arcata up at, and now this is after the diking machine has gone in, and look at how those wetland areas have shrunk to just a very small area next to the bay. And so all of that area between the bay and Samoa Boulevard would be subject to becoming wetland again pretty quickly if we had a breach in the dike, or if sea level rise finally rises over the dike, or if we start having groundwater intrusion coming up into those areas. Okay, let's move along after diking. Okay, anyone know where this is? It's a Schuster aerial photo, wonderful aerial photo. And I'll give you a hint. Let's hit the button again. That is the Bella Vista Inn. So you can see old Highway 101 that used to come up from Arcata going up by the Bella Vista Inn. And now you could probably figure out that we're seeing the Mad River as it appeared there in 1948. Now, the part that's going to surprise you, I've kept hidden. There it is. This is what Arcata looked like back when they had 30 or 40 lumber mills, either in town or on the periphery of the town. You can see the smoke being generated from about a dozen of these mills. And if this photo went over a little farther to the left, you'd see even more. Okay, that's fine, Vanessa. We can keep going. There it is all again. There they all are. And those photos are all online at the library website. Here we are with an aerial view from about the same time period of Arcata High, back when they had a football practice field between the high school and the cemetery. You could see some grave markers in the background here behind the row of trees. So I looked at this photo a lot, and I looked here, and it's a practice session, I think, but I couldn't figure quite what was going on. It only looks like there's about 7 players there, and it turned out they weren't football players, they were sheep. And what happened was that they would use a flock of sheep to mow the grass on the football field back in the 1940s, rather than have the expense of someone come out and mowing it by themselves. So it took me quite a while to figure out that that's why we had the unusual football formation, because the sheep were still in training. And here they are getting ready for a kickoff. There's all 11 of them in a row there. Okay. Go on to the next one. Okay. Anyone know where this is?
Wait, what? We have a question.
Oh, okay.
Is the palm tree on the senior lawn today that same palm tree that's featured in that old photograph?
Vanessa, could you repeat that? It's hard for me to pick up.
Palm tree on the senior lawn, the same palm tree in this photograph that's there right now.
Well, you've stumped me now. Here's a question I can't answer, and I do not know if it's a very old tree by now, if it is, because this photo dates from about 1948 or 49. Okay. And there they go. There go the sheep. And now we're going to have the mystery junction coming up. This is considered the most dangerous junction or intersection in Humboldt County back in the 1930s and 40s. Anyone know where it is?
299.
Oh, could you advance it, Vanessa? We have a correct answer. This is 299 used to come out back before they put in the freeway. You actually, all the truck logging trucks and everything that was coming along 299 to the west would come here and have to come to a dead stop as they met Highway 101, which is here on the right, and then pull out. And good luck if the truck stalled and somebody was speeding the other direction. I was actually involved in an accident like that on 101 down near Santa Barbara, where that very thing happened. So they had many, many accidents here until they finally realized that they needed to upgrade this and not just have a dead stop sign there and maybe some dead people as a result. Looks like I'm almost out of time. We have time for another one, Vanessa?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Here's another Schuster aerial photo in black and white. And then if we click again, we'll see it colorized. Anyone know where this is? What industrial complex they're showing here with all the smoke and steam rising? Did I hear?
Arcata Plywood.
No, Arcata Plywood's actually off to the right of this photo a little. This is the biggest operation they had in Arcata. In fact, it was the biggest employer of all in Arcata during the 1940s and 50s. Okay, let's go. 1947, and another click. It's the Cal Barrel Company that was down just north of Samoa Boulevard and west of K Street. And you can see the main complex there, and you can see they didn't use big logs because they were just making barrels, and these stacks of wood here are actually pre-cut cants, as they call them, C-A-N-T-S, that were going to be used for the barrel making process. And then you do see a log pond for the nearby Sound Lumber Company down at the bottom. And to give you your bearings, let's do one more click. And there's the revised Humboldt Creamery. By then, they had taken down the top of that tower, and it looks much more like it does today. So about a block south of the creamery, you started having the complex for Cal Barrel.
Hey, Jerry.
Yes.
I just want to make a comment. I had a real estate class down at CR a long time ago when I was a young forester, and Cal Barrel Company goes way, way back. And they used to own a lot of property in now what is McKinleyville. And the real estate agent pointed out that the vast majority of the town of McKinleyville, whatever remains of the entity of Cal Barrel Company, still owns the mineral rights for just about all the land that's underneath McKinleyville.
Well, I guess they'll have to revive the company if they discover gold in McKinleyville. You know, Cal Barrel, what they would do, they wanted spruce wood rather than redwood for their barrels and their crates. They wound up making a lot of crates. You might remember, some of you back in the 1960s, you would get a crate of corn coming into a market, and it would actually be in a wooden crate where they had shaved off sections of spruce and wired them together and put the corn in it. So the Cal Barrel Company would go out and get the timber rights or the land rights, the use rights to some of this land in a whole bunch of places. And McKinleyville was an area, also an area off of Essex Lane up at the top of Essex. There's a parcel up at Prairie Creek Redwood State Park where they logged the spruce and left the redwoods. And you can hike through that area today and see a bunch of stumps. And they're all from the spruce trees that were cut. But before they could go in and cut the redwood trees, it became part of the park. So you can find several locations like that around the area. Okay. Anytime you need to stop, let me know. I've got a couple of more images, but okay, this is a fun one. This is a map, of course, of most of Arcata. One more hit, and we'll show you where Butcher's Slough is. That starts out as Jolly Giant Creek, but when it gets down to the southwest side of Arcata, it becomes tidal area, or used to at least, and it becomes what's called Butcher's Slough. And that big rectangular pond that you sometimes walk around just north of the visitor center at the Arcata Marsh, it appears down here in the lower left of this map. That's called the Butcher's Slough Log Pond. So I've been trying to figure out, why is it called Butcher's Slough? And I've come up with what I think is the answer. Let's look at another image. It's because of this operation. That big wooden building in the center here is Devlin's Tannery, which was operating in the late 19th and early 20th century. And to get your bearings, let's go one more. I'll show you an arrow here. That's the old Marinos Club, that burned down maybe 15 years ago. It was just a half block off the plaza. So if we look at where Devlin's Tannery is, we're one block south of the co-op. It blocks the area where the co-op would be. And it was through this area that Butcher's Slough ran. And as near as I can tell, what they would do is slaughter animals here and strip the hides off to be tanned at the tannery. And whatever leftover material was that they didn't want to use for any other purpose was simply dumped into Butcher's Slough. And that probably included the tanning solution eventually when that wore out and they could no longer use it. So we had a nice load of contaminants coming down from this point all the way into the bay. So that's my guess on this. I've never been able to find another explanation for the name, but it's the one that makes sense to me. And let's see, I think we have one more image. Yeah, this is the last one, so I'll hurry up with this. Anyone want to guess what is here now and that appears in this photo? It is in downtown Arcata, and you can see a couple of signs over to the left that might give you a hint. Okay, let's go with the map then, and let's do a circle around the map. It was the freight and passenger station for the Arcata and Mad River Railroad that ran a dead-end line right into the building. And you saw the openings there where the engine could have gone. And just across the street from it, another circle, please, that's where the Jacoby storehouse is and where Brizard and Company operated for years. And so in the very early days, supplies would be come on to the Arcata Wharf, would be brought up by steamer, and then ferried by the Arcata and Mad River Railroad up to this station and move from the freight station over to the Brizard storehouse. In the very early days, they would make up pack trains in the backyard of the Jacoby storehouse, in that vacant area you see to the right of the pink circle, and then send these pack trains out into the backcountry with supplies for the Brizard and Company stores. Okay, so let's keep going one more time. And there's the post office right there where the freight station was 100 years ago for the Arcata and Mad River Railroad. Then we'll back off of all of that and come back. Okay, there's the map, and we'll move the circles, and we'll come back to the station. And if you look at the building here on the left, you can see where it's been stained by the smoke from the smokestack of the train engines coming down off of the roof, and with that black area under the center of the roof. So that, I think, is going to take us through a lot of old-time Arcata, and it looks like it's time for me to say it is the end. So thanks very much.
Can you take a couple of questions if anybody?
Oh, sure.
Jerry, did the Mad River used to empty into the bay?
Oh, you know, people keep asking that, and I keep saying no, and I'm still going to say no. Never did. There's actually an extension of Fickle Hill that ran in very early times out towards the ocean and formed a barrier there that has never been breached naturally. They did for a while create a small canal that connected Mad River with Mad River Slough, but that didn't work very well, and that was abandoned. So up till now, as near as we can tell, there has never been a connection between the Mad River and Arcata Bay. But if you hold on for 100 years, maybe, we will have that connection forming because of sea level rise. And what's going to happen is the Mad River is going to make a left turn as it comes down above Arcata, and it's going to go into Mad River Slough, and you will not have the Mad River going directly out to the ocean anymore. Instead, it's going to be pouring into Humboldt Bay and bringing who knows what all with it, but probably a lot of sediment. And that will be one of the big factors affecting the bay within the next 100 years.
Any other questions? Oh, Howard?
Jerry, the railroad line that came from San Francisco up to Humboldt County, did it extend up past Arcata? Or did
yes. Yeah, it did. Eventually, it started down right at the north side of San Francisco Bay in Sausalito. And you could actually take a ferry from the ferry building in San Francisco and get there and get on the train. And I believe the line ran 302 miles north, and it ended east of Trinidad. There's a rock quarry about a mile northeast of Trinidad, and the train line at one time at its peak of operation ran all the way up there. And in fact, there are old photos showing part of the quarry with the train station in front of it. But the northern part of the line was abandoned in, I believe, the early 1930s. And after that, it did not cross the Mad River anymore and stayed in the Arcata side of the Mad River area, and it was shortened by about 15 or 17 miles.
Well, thank you very much again. It was fascinating.
Thank you. Bye-bye.